got a good match in here. I'm always late and you always prompt.
Do
so
you?
that's
Okay.
pretty good.
Well, and I'll say
I did
this,
good today.
it doesn't bother me if other people are late. I drive. I want to first welcome all of you to the Overcomers. And I picked that name because one of the songs that I listened to when I was struggling and trying to find what I wanted to do, like who am I? You know, what is my purpose in life? I listened to that, I think it's called Mandisa, I think is her name. But she sings the song called Overcomers, and it is a powerful song. So I started listening to that, and I'll tell you, if you haven't heard it, look it up. It's gonna pump you up, because no matter where you are, it just is a jolt, and it lets you know, hey, yes, you are an overcomer. That's probably my signal that I should start. Let me just make sure, clear my calendar, okay. I apologize, now I will shut that off because it's good. But I want to share with you, because what I have found in a lot of the webinars I've attended, in courses that I've taken, is that we are among the few. We really are among the few of people who believe there's more knowledge out there, that we can become better, that we can find more potential in ourselves, and that our own personal capabilities are truly endless. And so I congratulate each one of you for being a part of this group, for wanting more knowledge, and it doesn't stop here. I always believe in whatever we learn, whatever we do, it's always to pay it forward. It's always to share that knowledge with someone else. Just like I have obtained knowledge from so many different sources and people, even people who are not experts in the field. That's why I shared with you. Each one of you are going to be sharing knowledge with me, because I never want to pretend, I never want you to think that I know everything. We're growing. We all grow, and it's when we stop, I believe, that we die. We die, maybe not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we die. And that's when misery, depression, etc. sets in. So as an overcomer, I welcome you to this first meeting that is going to be on how to stop worrying. There's one requirement that I ask of each one of you, and that is to just believe. I want you to all just believe that there's a possibility, because I know that in a lot of the topics that we'll be covering over the months, it may be hard to believe, but it's all what we are training our minds to think and how to behave. And if we can just say, you know what, I don't see it, but I'm going to believe it, I'm going to have faith to take at least one step. Because I promise you, when we do that, we achieve more, once again, that you will ever think is possible. Because and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I told some of you part of it, and then we're going to go to those little stickers here, and then we'll continue. But a part of my story is that I didn't really realize when I lost my job after that 7.5 years that I had not been living my life. I was living someone else's life. And it wasn't until I had the time to really think about that it was revealed to me. Because what I found was that I always wanted to be valued. I always wanted somebody to see something in me that made them happy, or that, you know, taught them something. And I never had that. What I did was, because I shared with you ladies that I was a nurse. You know, I am a nurse, not a practicing nurse. But the reason I got into that field was not because I wanted to be a nurse. If I think back, it was because I always desired to help people, to teach people. And so I thought, well, maybe that's what it is then. I need to be a nurse. But what I realized too was, it was because my sister was a nurse. My oldest sister, it just seemed like, you know, I don't know if you have sisters or brothers, but the oldest one has it all together. You know, everybody praises them. And my sister worked in the same hospital, or I worked in the same hospital as she did. I started out watching cardiac monitors. And then I went to school full-time, worked full-time, going through a divorce, and you know, anytime, as I became the nurse, we were working side by side, but anytime, you know, a family member or friend was admitted to the hospital, my family and, you know, extended family would always say, well, you know, Dawn works there, she's a nurse there. And it dawned on me, why didn't anybody ever say that I did too, you know? And then it never, like dawned on me until this one Christmas party that we had with these doctors I had worked with for 8 years on the floor, that he introduced me to his wife as, this is Dawn's sister. Now, and I'll tell you that it never dawned, like that hurt my feelings at the time, and it was like in my memory, but it wasn't until I lost that job that I was able to sit back and apply what I've learned that I teach other people and apply it to myself, that I found that. I found that I was never satisfied because I wasn't living my life. I was following my sister's footsteps. And so when I was looking after I lost that job, I kept looking in the same kind of field. I thought, why am I doing this? This isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. I've always wanted to inspire and teach people and give back. That's what fulfills me. You know, that's what I'm passionate about, is helping somebody else succeed, you know, or improve their lives. And so that's why I set out to become a personal development coach. And I just started my business. Actually, I launched a website that I made myself in February. And people said, well, you should probably get a professional. And I thought, no, it's going to be unique, just like me. I don't care if it's all fancy. I wanted to take a shot at it, you know, and then maybe down the road sometime I will decide that, you know, I want to change it. But I needed to do it for me because it made me feel like I had purpose and that I have, because if you've ever, I don't know if any of you are IT, I am not. I can't even use my cell phone, okay? So that was a huge task for me. But my point is during that whole time, I could have worried about building that. I could have worried about, you know, finding people to talk to. And, you know, there's so many, and I just thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going forward no matter what, no matter how long it takes me. I'm going to fulfill the purpose that I believe I was created for. And so when we do that, we hit obstacles. We hit all kind of roadblocks. And that's why I thought, you know, a lot of worrying takes place with that, but in our everyday lives, because I have 2 adult children. And sometimes they make me insane. But, you know, you want to protect them. You worry about them. You worry about decisions they make, or, you know, are they coming home on time? What are they doing, you know? I just found that I was worrying nonstop about everything. So I thought, this is a perfect topic for me, too. And so as I was applying the strategies that I teach other people to my own life, I noticed that I started changing, and I thought, this is what it's about. So, right now, before I have you introduce yourselves, take one of those stickers. One of those stickers is just for your name, okay? That's just so, you know, other people can see your name. We can talk to each other. And then, here's the second one. I want you to write on there anything that is distracting you right now. Anything that you came in here with that could be a distraction. For me, when I used to go into meetings and have to do presentations, I would be thinking, what time is it? You know, when are we getting out of here? I wonder if my children are home. Did my husband remember to do this? You know, did I leave that coffee pot on? Whatever is distracting you, write it on that piece of paper. If nothing is distracting you, good. But anything that comes to mind. And the reason we did this is because I have found that when something is distracting you, we can't focus, you know, because it's out there. We just cannot focus, put our whole attention into something. And that causes us, those distractions kind of can turn into worry if we're not careful. And the reason we have you write it down is because you've just signaled your brain, okay, I acknowledge what you're telling me, now I'm writing it down, and now what I want you to do is just simply say to yourself, or to your paper in your mind, I will deal with you later, I will deal with you when the class is done. Because when we can do that, it's very powerful. And for me, I never did that. You know, like when I was working, I would have to, you know, I would be instructing my coaches what to do. I'd have to be on a meeting, you know, I'm getting text messages, emails. You cannot pay attention. You just cannot give something your full attention. So my exercise for myself is, even when I'm working at home, is, okay, this is where I need my full attention. What is bugging me right now? And then I'll just take a quick minute and jot it down. So that was for you. So that you can devote your focus not just to me, but to, you know, what we're going to be talking about and your input as well. Because hopefully things are going to connect for you and things will relate with you. So if you want to, I'd like you to introduce yourself. You don't have to. You can just say, hi, my name is, or you can just go to town. Tell us whatever you want. We'll start here.
My name is Angela, and I work here in Madison, and the group sounded interesting.
Great.
I'm Ornetta. I work on Redstone Optional. And I'm pretty sure I did this group.
I bet.
My name is Charlotte. I'm retired. I'm helping to raise a 15-year-old boy,
Wonderful.
and I need all the help I can get to help him and these other kids that are in a program that I work with.
Great. Great.
My name is Patricia, and I'm raising a 13-year-old girl who's in the going to the ninth grade from Madison Academy. She attends Madison Academy. I've been raising my daughter since she was 7.5 weeks old, so I'm divorced. I work on Redstone Optional, and I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Rose, and I'm an empty nester, and 5 months ago I became a grandmother,
Wow.
and I am a worry wart. I battled anxieties, especially separation anxieties, because I was a single mother for a long time, so that was difficult. I run a full-service web-based travel agency and event management planning,
Wow.
so I've been doing that for 8 years.
Great. Great. Well, welcome. We have a variety of backgrounds here, which is so exciting because we can really feed off of one another and help one another. And I like hearing all of those stories because, like, especially when you're being honest and open and sharing, you know, yes, I need this. Because I think we all do, but sometimes we just don't want to be open, you know, or honest with other people, especially that we don't know, because what happens? Oh, they'll think we're weak. And we are not weak. We are all overcomers, and we're going to prove that. We're going to prove that over the months. We're going to take what we learn, and let me share with you too. What I want this group to be about as well is that we will not always succeed, but it doesn't matter. You know, we will fail, but that's good because it's only when we fail that we learn and grow. So don't ever hesitate if you say, you know what, I had a horrible week or I had a horrible month, you know, that's okay because I've had them too. I'll get done reading a powerful book, you know, high up on the mountain, telling my whole family who looks at me like I'm crazy. And the next day I just crash. Somebody does something and I crash. And I could stay there. And I think a lot of times in my past I have, you know. And so what I always say is, okay, I'm going to have that pity party for me for an hour. But after that hour, it's done, you know. And I'd like to be able to shorten that time frame up. I haven't gotten there yet. But I will allow myself the pity party for an hour because anything more than that starts to stick. But during that hour, I'm using positive reinforcements to try to help me get out of that faster. But we're going to go on now. And I shared with you about, on the left-hand side, I apologize for not letting you know that. But the topic is how to stop worrying and that there's no such thing as not worrying. So yes, we are worry warts, but the second part of this I think is powerful. There is a way to conquer it and not allow it to conquer us, okay? And I think a lot of times, even with health issues, anxiety, depression, a lot of that stems from here, you know? I think a lot of times, even people who are medicated, you know, I was on Prozac before for a weird thing. You know, I was going through a divorce, going to nursing school, and all of a sudden I end up with an irregular heart rhythm because I think it was stress, you know, I think it was just anxiety. So my doctor said, you know, because I said, am I dying? And he's like, no, you're just anxious. I'm like, I don't feel anxious at all. He's like, Laurie, you're working full-time. You're going to nursing school full-time. You're in the middle of a divorce. You just moved out of your house and are taking care of your kids. I'm thinking you're stressed. And so, but it, you know, affects us physically, not just, you know, emotionally, you know. So that's important to be aware of. And so when we talk about worry, worry is just another name for fear. Now here's some things that I want to share with you that I've learned. And this is open discussion. So if you don't agree, if you have a different, you know, something else that you want to share, please jump in. But for me, when I've been doing a lot of reading, and here's the bottom line. Either we allow fear to win or freedom wins. Okay? Either fear wins or freedom wins. Long ago, when we talked about fear, fear was related, it was what the word we assigned to something that was going to cause physical harm or death. Now, I think most of us, most of the time, I'm not saying never, but most of the time, the worry, which is fear, that we have will not cause us physical harm, and it certainly will not kill us. But what happened is that we have attached fear to our personalities, to our egos. We've attached that word, and when you do that, it creates this negative tag in your brain that says, hey, don't do that. People will make fun of you. Hey, don't do that. You're going to fail. You know, do you remember before what happened when you failed? Now, we have to, if we take this back, if we just grab hold of that one concept here tonight, that fear, if it's not going to cause us physical harm or death, we recognize it as such, we can push it away. And then we're going to talk about turning it, because that truly is where fear came from. Now, I will pipe in here. So when I say that, I'm making a joke, but literally, if we can think about what we're worrying about, if it is not going to cause physical harm or death, then we can deal with it. We can deal with it and get rid of it, okay? Now, I'm going to ask you to do something before we even get in deeper. I want you, anywhere on this paper, because on the bottom you see I have, worry is another name for fear. And I listed some of the most common different types of fears that we can experience, okay? Now, there are others. There are obviously a lot more different kind of fears. But I think that, you know, if you look at those, you may be able to relate to some of those and not to others. But on to the right of that, I want you to write what causes you worry. What causes you to worry? When we talk about, you know, what our fears are, I'm going to give you a little example. And I want you, based on like what you wrote, just to hold this, you know, pass that down. See, because some of our fears, you know, those are bigger rocks. So I thought, you know, those bigger rocks, if we had to hold those out for a time being, okay? Picture those, maybe your house, or your car, or your finances, or your kids, or your parents, or your spouse. If all of those rocks represented that, and you were carrying that, I would tell you that within an hour, your arm's going to be hurting. But that's what negative or worrisome things in our minds do, because we're constantly carrying those things. Now, I got this one because these are those little worries, you know? Like, will I remember to get the milk at the grocery store because I really need it for a recipe? So we carry a ton of those, but they weigh the same, you know? They weigh the same, even though they're tiny. So what's important is that it doesn't matter how small they are or how big they are. If we're carrying it for a long period of time, it's still going to affect us the same way. And I did that just because I want you to understand the difference here, because I think we make excuses. We make excuses for ourselves that allow us to take that worry, or, well, you don't understand. You don't understand, where I am. You don't understand. I have, blah, blah, blah. We make excuses for ourselves to carry the worry. And so today, we're going to identify, here are my worries, and I want you to look at your list. And if it doesn't include physical harm or death, we're going to say, I've got to fix this then. We've got to change it, because I don't want to carry that around anymore. And so instead, we're going to carry around these. And so everybody just take one of these little fake rose petals, and they're black because that's the only color they had in the store. And I want you to take this home with you, because anytime you worry, you're going to pull this out and say, you know what? It's not that big of a deal, and I'm going to get rid of it. Okay? Yes. Because I think, you guys are probably looking at me like, you are a nutcase. But this has helped me in my life, because I can tell you, I've sat in many classrooms, I've sat on many webinars, and everything sounds awesome, and I take notes, but I have to hurry and sketch them down, and then I go back and I don't understand them, and it doesn't always relate. But that is like your token. And so if you don't remember anything else, you can say, this is going to mean to me, freedom wins, okay? So if we're looking at that, I want you to take a look at your list, and on that page 2, on the top here, I actually just had you write it on page 1, but on page 2 it gives you a little bit of space there, but not enough to write everything down. Because I asked you, what are your fears? What are your worries? Okay? You wrote those down. Now on the bottom there, it says, draw a picture of what fear makes you feel and look like. Draw a picture. And the reason I'm doing this is because, once again, I'm not crazy. And that's what the crayon in front of you is for, because it's a dull, brown, black, or gray color. That's what fear or worry is going to resemble. And so I don't care if it's a stick person with a frown. I don't care if it's black clouds or a rainy day. How does it make you feel? And it's important for us, the reason we're doing this, once again. Our brain is so used to, it has file folders in it, and it takes what we allow in and it puts it in a file folder. And so even though I saw that spider when I was 7 or 8, and I'm 50-something now, I still have that same memory, because my brain says, hey, that spider's here again, yanks out the folder and says, react. That's what happens every time with the worry. That's why this is how you conquer a lot of things in life. You apply emotion to it, you allow yourself to feel that emotion, and you allow yourself, you have to bring in as many of your senses as you can. So you can see it, you can touch it, you can draw it or write it, you can say it, because once we apply each of these things, we give ourselves that positive, more control. Because it's going to be hard to just switch that, switch off and turn the other one on unless we attach a strong emotion to it. The way to attach that strong emotion is to apply as many senses. So even though this seems like silly exercises that I'm having you do, it's powerful. If you want to, I'm using this one because I used it for years. If you want to lose weight, I would tell people, I want you to stand in front of your mirror. I want you to look yourself in the eye, and I want you to say, you are beautiful. I want you to look at yourself, and I want you to see, what do you love about yourself? Because if I went around this room, and maybe I'm wrong, But I doubt that many of us do that. I can tell you that I never did it. I never looked in the mirror and said, I love you. But isn't it easy for us to share our love with somebody else? It's important, because that's why I said your requirement in this group is to believe, even if it's a little bit, because then you're taking it over, you're taking power. So these exercises that I'm having you do, your brain's going, what are you talking about? You know, you said it, I heard it, I wrote it down, I drew it, I'm saying it, because now it comes crashing in, and now your brain is like, what are we doing now? Instead of saying, here's the file folder, okay? So when you think that, okay, Laurie Maxon is nuts, understand that there is a reason that I'm doing these things to you, okay? So now that we know what you're feeling, and I want you to look at that picture that you drew. Does that excite you? You know? Do you want to be that person? But see, when you are in that worry, you know, the weight is on you, that's how you look to other people. That's how other people see you. And I'll be honest with you, when I'm like that, my family is just like, knock it off or back off. People don't want to be around someone who's, how many times, you know, have you been around somebody that just says, oh, I just can't, you know, I'm just so worried. And you can't snap them out of it, you know. Maybe it's a girl's day out or a girl, you know, mother-daughter, and, you know, one of you is just like, oh, I'm so fat, I can't wear this dress, I don't like this, you know, I hate my hair today, which I almost did. But, you know, you do this to yourself, and everybody's like, well, you just shut up. So that's what that picture is supposed to represent. You don't want to be that. And so we need to fix that. We need to stop that, okay? So let's keep going. Does anybody have anything? I want to stop. Is this making sense? Or
Yeah.
do you, yeah.
Well, for me, I've been dealing with trying to learn, that's a good one, to love myself, to forgive myself.
Yes.
And I didn't realize how hard that is.
Oh.
It's one of the hardest things that I've ever done because I'm still clueless.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of love for other people and can help other people.
Right.
But if I really stand in front of a mirror,
Mm-hmm.
I could name in a heartbeat 20 things that I remember that I've either done or said
Mm-hmm.
that are, not far from my conscious.
Yeah.
And so when I think about myself, it's not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get fearful and angry, well, that's even worse.
Fuels
That
it.
just compounds. Yeah.
It just sets it on fire and says, hey, you're right. You're not any good, doesn't it?
I think we fall into that old saying, you are your own worst critic.
Oh, yes.
And when you were talking about the mirror, every time I look in the mirror, I will find something and say, I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I never find the positive when I look in the mirror. I look for the flaw.
Right. Well, and I have to say that I think women do that more so than men. And now I'm not being, judgmental. I'm just saying, because if we look at what's happening around the world, if we look on TV, if we look at magazines, I don't look like that in a bathing suit. I don't even look like that in a pair of pants, or a cute little dress. So I compare myself to the beautiful woman in front of me that everybody else does. Because I'm sorry, I like a lot of different bizarre shows. But, they're all like police shows, like the CSI, NCIS, Criminal Minds. That's the kind of shows I like. But even there's hot chicks in there, Now how can you run down the sidewalk chasing a criminal in stilettos? I can't even stand in them. But when I started to, really apply myself, and let me share with you, this was only last year. I've been a coach for years. I've coached hundreds of people. But it was always to help somebody else. And that's when I finally realized, I gotta start here. How many more people could I have helped if I first understood how to do it to me? And that's why I said, look in the mirror. And it's gonna be hard, but every day, look in the mirror and say, I love you. I love you, and you know why I love you? Because you care about other people. You love other people. You would give to other people. And what are the most important things? And what we have to do is unplant those. Now we have to start looking at it and say, you know what? I may not be perfect, but I like who I am. And then, here's the kicker. If we find something that we don't like, we say, you know what? I can be better at that. Or I can make myself look better. If I don't like that my arms fly in the wind when I wave to somebody, I can start working out. I'm not gonna say, oh, I have flabby arms. I'm gonna say, you know what? These could use some toning, right? It's changing the way we think, and especially for ourselves. So just like you were sharing, I think we all can relate. It's so hard. It's so hard to forgive ourselves. It's so hard to look at ourselves and say, I matter. But if you just practice that, and even if you have to write it down, even if you have to color pictures, even if you have to find a special token, find something that's going to remind you to do it every day. And if you really want to conquer this faster, set timers or an alarm clock, or say every time I eat, I'm going to say this to myself. Because we need to take back power, because if we don't, then what happens is that negative settles in, and it doesn't know what to do. You're the one that controls it. We control our thinking. We control that negative vibe, which means if we let it in, we can yank it out. But we have to be willing to say, okay, it's been there for 25 years. You know, it's gonna take a while. And it takes practice just like anything else. Anybody else?
When I look in the mirror, I just look at the parts. I don't even look at myself in the mirror.
I know.
That's,
Yeah, it's true.
it's gonna be hard for me because I look there, I put my makeup on, but I don't look at myself.
I know. I know.
It's gonna be,
It's
You're just
so
going through a
hard.
routine.
yeah, I never look at myself.
Well, I purposefully didn't look at myself, you know? And so, and it was funny because I was thinking about this. It's very hard to look at ourselves and say, I really like who you are. But I teach this course about discovering who you are. When I wrote that course, it really hit home, because I thought, I've got to do each one of these things. And when you discover truly who you are, you will love yourself. Because see, what happens is you find all of those wonderful things that you have just taken for granted. You just are this person, but you don't think it's anything special, but everybody else around you does. So keep that in mind too when you look in the mirror.
Well, it's judgment too, self-judging.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And the judgment you get from other people
Mm-hmm.
that causes the low self-esteem, lack of confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think for me, I became, as I've gotten older, I probably would say, I'm 53, so right around 40, I had this awareness of being consciously aware of who I select to have as friends and people as a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because being divorced and in the past, I had a propensity to attract people who were a detriment to myself rather than an
Absolutely.
enhancement. So I think when you have someone who comes into your life and they're critical of you, whether they're critical of you physically, mentally, or what have you, it does take a toll on your self-esteem. And then if you stay within those relationships or what have you, you start believing it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that becomes the biggest problem. So I have to do a whole 360 and start to do a shift change on who I wanted to be a part of my life.
Absolutely. That's so true. And a lot of what, I think a lot of what personal development is selecting those people. Selecting the people, the support, that you will get the support from. And those that you don't, they can be acquaintances. but they're not allowed in this circle. You know, this is as far as you get. Only those who are going to support me, lift me up, and believe in the things that I do can come in here. And that means none of your advice, nothing you say, it's all in that outer ring. And so like if you make yourself like a hula hoop, you know, and picture it that way. And what you just said is kind of where we're going. Because if we go on now and we look on page 3, the digging deeper, here I think is really what you're sharing, okay? Because when we talk about fears and when those fears arise, we need to begin to start questioning them. And here's just some questions, but I know that you guys will come up with your own. These are ones that I've used at different circumstances in my own life. And one of them is this something I can control? Because I too worried about my adult children. I worry about what they're doing, are they making the right choice? And then when I ask myself that question, is this something I control? My answer is no. So if it's out of my control, I have to say, okay, what is going to be my new response? My new response, because I set triggers in for myself, my new response is, I can't change their behavior, I can't control the situation. What I can do is just pray that they understand, which I've taught them, weigh the choice that you make. Because there's either going to be a consequence or you're going to have a positive outcome. But you need to make the choice on which it's going to be. But understand, just like it's all yours making the decision, it's all yours, whatever this is. And so then I can let it go. And then whenever it would sneak back in, the trigger would say, hey, remember, we can't control this, it's not ours. So then another of the questions is it a matter of life or death? Obviously, we know that we're going to have to take some kind of control over it if it is a matter of life and death. We do have the right to be afraid, but we still have to weigh, what is the choice I'm going to make? You know, what can I do? What would be the best choice to make in this kind of circumstance? Okay? Another one, what's the worst possible outcome? Man, I have spent hours worrying about things, and when I ask myself that question, so somebody doesn't get there on time, or so somebody's car breaks down and they have to call AAA. What is the worst possible outcome? You know, because when we think of that, it isn't really, because now you stop the brain and you said, all right, hold on, I hear you, but what's the worst thing that can happen in this situation? And most of the time, we just have to laugh at ourselves and say, oh my gosh, that was not really a big deal. So look at these questions, keep them. If you want to, write them on an index card, carry them with you. I used to put them on stickies and slap them on my computer screen so I couldn't see it. Wherever it's going, whatever it's going to take. Maybe some of those questions don't fit you or you don't like them. Reword them, create your own. But then here's another important thing too. How do I remove it? Not can I. Do you feel the difference there? The how can I remove it gives you power. It gives you the control. Can I says it's waving back and forth, meaning you're going to get influenced by someone else, something else, and it's not your control. So it's not, don't ever say, how can I remove this? You know, it's how do I? Because that tells the brain I need an answer. And I know that we don't think that those little words make a difference. They make a huge difference. Okay? And then what will I replace it with? See, because it's not going to go away unless we do something about it. We've got to replace it. So one of the things I do is if I'm worrying about my son or I'm worrying about my daughter, I'll say to myself, they are 20-some years old. I have taught them the best that I can. If they make a choice that's wrong, they'll learn from the consequence. But see, I don't need to do anything else, but I will support them and I will keep sharing with them knowledge that I have, not control, not manipulating, but knowledge. It's their choice what they do with it. So when it says, what will I replace it with? I remind myself, you've already done this. You've already taught them, you've already told them. So now, what do you want to focus on today? What do you want to accomplish today, Laura? You know, and I switch that off, and if I can get myself to focus on something else, I'll write it down if it keeps distracting me and say, this isn't mine, and this is what I need to work on. So it's constantly being aware where your thinking is and what your thinking is. Okay? Now, here is something too. If you look on that other little question that I have down there is, what is the source of this fear? And I want you to think about that, because you assigned the feeling of pain to the situation or the response. Because anytime we fear, we assign pain. Pain for ourselves, pain for the situation. Like, I look at it like, when my kids are doing something, I worry because they will have pain if they disobey me, I will have pain and it will distance my relationship. There's no pleasure in that for me. It's either pain or pleasure. It's either we are going to fear or have freedom. And so whatever is causing that fear, think of the source. You were sharing a good thing. This is what, just like I was telling you too about my experience. Somewhere in the past, and this is what I have people do in my coaching sessions, is I take them all the way back. When is the first time you experienced that fear? And if you think about it, like for me, you know, I used the silly example of the spider, but even though remember, it still has the same weight, even though they're little, if I don't identify where they came from and what happened at that time, what I was feeling at that time, I cannot go forward because it will always be there. We need to resolve this. We need to resolve that issue. So for when I was like going through school, my time, when I was going through the school, when I was working, and I had that stress, and I was feeling very anxious, nervous, I had to take myself back. Why am I doing this? Why is this coming about? It had nothing to do with the spider when I was little. What it had to do with was my first husband. When we got married, I'm not going to go into the whole long story, but I always felt alone. I always felt alone, and that I would never make it on my own. So when I was going through all of that, and I was stressing myself out and worrying about, you know, am I going to do this? Why was it? Because I was afraid way back then, when he made me afraid I was going to be alone. When he told me he would leave me and I would have nothing. And so when I found that answer to that part, I was able to say, well, look at me now. I'm doing 3 things at once. You don't matter anymore. So I know that I've already gotten a year into nursing school, working full-time, and having my kids. I can do this. And I surrounded myself around other nurses and family that said, yes, you can. But I had to identify it, or I would have kept hitting that vicious circle. So anytime I started to relive that, I know where it came from. I know it wasn't true. I didn't have to be afraid of it anymore. So I took that pain away, and I created a new vision for myself of here is who I am. Here's what I'm doing. And to this day, that is one of my greatest accomplishments that I recall. is that I was able to do all of that at once. And if you would have asked me today to go and do it, I would say, no way. But at the time, it was, you know, it was hard, but it is one of my best memories.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I'm an overcomer. I overcame that. And so if I can do that I felt physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally affected me, if I did that, I can take that and go forward. So when we think about those fears, when you look at your paper and you think about those fears, think as far back as you can, where did it come from? It came from somewhere and you said, this is painful. And so everything associated with that, or that your brain says, hey, this looks like that, even if it's not exactly the same, it's going to say, remember, we have pain. This causes us fear, so let's be afraid. And let's stay there, and let's melt down. But if we can find it, and you need to understand, how were you feeling at that time? What did it make you feel like? Because you can picture that moment, but if you don't go really deep and say, what was going on? Who was around me? Because a lot of times I'll tell you something else that I heard from one of the speakers that I listened to is, if you're in a situation, and maybe it's with, I'm making this up, a younger man or an older woman, we're in the mix right there. You will have tendency to be wary of those kind of people in your life, and you won't even realize it. Like, you don't want to be around, because as soon as they do something that resembles that situation, all of a sudden you hate 20-year-old guys and you hate 60-year-old women. And you're like, and if somebody says, well, why don't you like her? I don't know. And we do that.
Yeah, it's true.
You know? And we don't know why, because we haven't gone back to see, what was the source? What was I feeling? Who was there? Where was I? Or you're at an amusement park and something bad happened, so now you don't like going to the amusement parks. And when somebody asks you why, you go, I don't know, I just don't like the rides. That's not why. You know? It's maybe you got lost and you couldn't find your parents or something. You couldn't find your child. So that's why that part's important. Here is the biggest question. You will hear me, if you come to the other groups, you will hear me ask you this over and over again. What is holding on to these fears costing me? But we will replace that word fears. What is holding on to your fears costing you? Because if you think about it, it's taking away joy. It's taking away your freedom. It can be interfering with relationships that you create, because some of those stories I was sharing with you are true. It can affect a lot of things in your life, but what is it costing you? And if it's important enough to you, if it's costing you enough of your joy, your happiness, your peace, then it's time to start putting these steps into action and saying, no more, no more. That leads us to the bottom of page 3, transform your fears. And you don't have to do this today, because I really want you to be able to spend time thinking about this. And if you look at the little graph I put there, it's a fear of, or worry of, or the cause of your fear. And whatever that is, maybe it's separation, maybe it's low self-esteem, or you're afraid of failure. Then I want you to go and say, what's the negative emotion attached to that? What, you know, if I have a fear of failure, what's the negative emotion that I feel? There's not a right answer. The emotion that I would feel is defeat. You know, I would feel defeated if I fail, or embarrassed. You know, like, those are the words that come to mind for me. If I failed at something, those are the words that I would associate with it if I had a fear of failure, which I did before. So now what? So what's my positive emotion now? Well, if I look at defeated and I look at embarrassed, I would change that word defeated to victor, you know, or embarrassed to proud. And And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those emotions and I'm going to say, remember, how do I remove it? I'm going to choose, this is who I am. I am a victor. I am a victor. I am proud, or I am successful, or I am confident that I am, and it's not I will be, it's I am, I can. That's who you are. And once you start repeating those phrases to your brain's going to take it in. And it's going to say, oh, okay, follow that. I am confident. And I would say, another thing to do is put yourself in that situation. See, I'm not a public speaker. And I remember in high school, I was always afraid of public speaking. And this isn't one of the things, I don't speak eloquently, but I'm me. And I like to be me. And so before, like I used to have to do presentations for big wigs. And at first, when I first had to do that, I was very uncomfortable, thinking, I don't talk like you people do. I talk to people, you know, of all ages to help them understand their health in a 3rd to 5th grade level so that they understand me. I don't talk up here. And it didn't matter because when I went up there, I was me and people understood me. They didn't care about the big words or little words that I used. They didn't care about my jokes or, you know, I'm making them color, you know, because they related to what I needed to share with them because they understood I was passionate about that. I wanted them to see how things could change or how I could help them. And that's the things that I want you to understand. I don't want you to look like me. I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be all of you. Because you guys have something more special than I do in each of you. And it's all going to be different. And that's why it's so cool. So on that bottom there, that's what I really want you to focus on. I want you to work on that. And then, if you look on page 4, these are the daily actions I was talking about. Remember, once we go through, once you pull out all the garbage from underneath the beds, your kids' bedrooms, or you know, the garage, or the attic, or your closet, you know, all the old clothes, you don't leave it sitting in the middle of the room, right? So we can say, hey, we cleaned it all out of there, but it's still there. We need to get rid of it. The way to get rid of it is with our daily actions. So if you look at that, what is most important in your life? I want you to think about that. And the way I do this, once again, these are different questions that I come up with. You're going to come up with your own. But when I think about what is most important in my life, things that I want to ask myself are, what am I thankful for? You know, I am thankful that I can at least get out of my bed, you know. I'm thankful that I have children, even though we fight or we get along. Doesn't matter. I'm thankful I have that. And we need to be thankful for even the little things. I'm thankful that my friend called me and left me a voicemail. I'm thankful, whatever it is. Make yourselves a list. Create your little journal. How can I inspire someone today? That's a big thing for me. I love doing that. I love being able to see somebody smile or somebody connect to something I said, even if it's little. What am I wanting for myself today? You know, am I wanting to be proactive? Am I wanting to accomplish this? Am I wanting to write a book? Am I wanting to, you know, plant my flowers? What am I wanting for myself? What do I want others to see in me? One of the things, I'll give you a little clue, one of the things that we're going to be doing is, one of our groups, I'm going to ask you to think about what you want other people to say about you. When I thought about that, I thought, well, I can give you a list, you know, but we'll talk about that another time. Think about these things that are going to put you in a more positive, forward-thinking mindset. And then what positive emotions can I focus on? And I put this little thing, you can write your own words in there. You can create your own little words along the side. But really do this. And it's a daily action. So don't just do this and then put it aside. Do it and put it somewhere that you're really going to make yourself take action on it. And then, you don't have to do this now because you were so great, but I have you drawing a picture of what you want yourself to look like, that positive person. Who are you? How do you feel? I want, whatever it is that you're finding on those daily actions, draw that picture and make it bright, and that's where you got to use the other color. So if you want, you can use your other colors and color it, but I want you to use the bright colors. I want you to make it positive because your brain is going to connect to all of that. So if you're willing, you can color it now, but be thinking about that. And then what I wanted to tell you too is that this is your life, and you control your response and your thinking. I am not here to change you. I am here to give you steps, strategies, concepts to help you change you. I'm not here to control what you think. I'm here to empower you to think. And that's what I want you to grasp today. Fear or freedom. And I want to share with you too, if ever in any one of my courses you are interested in working one-on-one with me, there is information over there. I have a brochure over there. Feel free to, after our meetings, if you have a question, if something's bothering you, my email is on, well, you actually have it in there, my business card is in your folders. My email address is on the other side.